What's up, 444? We are back with the DFS MVP podcast. The first time as a trio. Pat back from Vegas now. Excited to be working with both Davis and Pat Corinne. I get to cosplay as Sam Sherman today. I get to pretend that I'm Sam Sherman. This will be a lot of fun. First of all, Pat, how was Vegas?
It was great. Yeah. And it was a blast. We drafted a bunch of high stakes teams over with the FFPC and did two main events, a standalone 5K with Mike Leone. And then we hung out, watched the game Thursday night. We did a little ship chasing get together on Friday. Watched the Friday night game at Circa, which has a pretty sweet setup. So
I saw a lot of fun pictures from the event. I also saw that a ship chaser won the Millie solo Millie in a showdown last night. That was pretty cool. Was he there in Vegas or no?
I don't believe Jay Fresh was out there, okay. But yeah, congrats to him. I think Sacrilegious was telling me he needed to win. Like, I think he needed the Bass field goal to go in.
Sacrilegious was okay. Don't feel bad for him. Sacrilegious was part of legitimately a 500 team train. He would have won. He would have won less than he won in rookies and sophomores when he won that. I think we can let Jay Fresh. I think we can let him have his moment. He's been complaining about this all day in Discord, and I don't feel bad for him. I happen to be 1v1 that lineup in all of my contests. Janu versus Jason Sanders, which is extra annoying that my Sims did not give that to me because I had more than the field of Janu anyway, which is extra annoying. Crane, I did want to ask you a question. Sure. What was it like when Xavier Worthy scored that touchdown at the Ship Chasers party? Was it one of the greatest moments?
It was electric, and we did. So John Warner, we played this game where you kind of do like rock. It's almost like rock paper scissors. You throw in a number, right? And it's four of us. It's me, Pete, Gretsch, and John Warner. And whoever's different, whoever throws in it's one or two. Whoever's got the one right, then you start the draft, and you draft a player that you think is going to score the touchdown. So I had Xavier Worthy on that touchdown. So yeah, so nice. It's just a little snake draft, just a little eight players. Everyone gets two, and that added a little extra element. I was going nuts.
That's for the first touchdown only, or do you
No, we kept doing every time there's a touchdown, then you just do it again. So it's actually a delightful little added element to the game. But yeah, we played it through Thursday and Friday. But that every time there was a touchdown, someone was celebrating even a little extra harder.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. Beautiful. As long as you don't get some no-name touchdown that nobody has, I guess you just keep going at that point.
You just keep rolling, yeah. You just keep rolling it with the players you had.
Nice. All right, well, we're going to go position by position. We'll start with quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, tight ends. Maybe we'll talk about defenses. We'll see. But let's start by just recapping last week a little bit. Now, Davis and I already recapped the Chiefs game from last week because that was the Thursday night game. So we talked about that one a little bit. Davis, any other big takeaways from this weekend? Any teams you're really excited about the start from or really disappointed with anybody? How are you feeling about how things went last week?
I'm a little disappointed in the Ravens, the whole offense. I mean, we already talked about that, but I am a little I keep wanting them to pass more, and I keep wanting Lamar to be more aggressive. And the whole likely game, I don't know if I've really heard anyone make this take yet, but the whole likely game was Lamar doing what the Chiefs wanted him to do, which was not take shots, not pass up the seam, everything towards the sideline, everything short. That was all the likely stuff. I'm the only person who seems to think this. I was actually pretty encouraged by how Kyler played against the Bills. I thought he scrambled really well. He went 5 for 5 scrambles, getting first downs. They were all for first downs. The touchdown pass to Michael Wilson was. Now you only have to do that if you're Kyler Murray and you're 5'7", but he kept that play alive.
This is just because you have unbelievable Dortch bags. This is just Dortch.
Yeah,
of course you're okay with it.
Wait till we get to wide receiver. I'm about to blow your mind with some of my wide receiver takes. Not in the way you're thinking. You're thinking I'm going to come in hot on Dortch. That's not the direction that I'm going. And the Lions, I was like, it's not the year 2 jump for Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery's roles the exact same as the last time we saw him. Absolutely no change in the way that those players are being used. So those were a couple of the big things.
It was interesting because there was a long period, like from the start of the second quarter, like David Montgomery had a carry, I want to say early in the second quarter, and I feel like he went nearly a full half without like seeing
Without
the
the
field.
ball. Yeah.
Or at least not touching the ball. It was crazy. But then they like right at the end brought him back in, and it was just like, all right, it's David Montgomery time. He scores a touchdown at the end. All is good. So for a little while, it looked pretty promising for Gibbs. Like maybe he was taking on more of a role. But yeah, you look at the numbers at the end of the game, and it's like, yep, David Montgomery had more carries than Gibbs. Gibbs was out there running a lot of routes, just basically the exact same usage that we expected. Correct. How about you? Any big things that you're happy with or disappointed in from week 1?
Yeah, I think some of the disappointment, like we got excited about a number of these new offenses, so we can have like different offensive coordinators and kind of a sharper approach to the game. Seattle didn't really run play action, didn't look that different. They used Noah Fant. Noah Fant ran routes. That was cool.
I think it's defenders. I think it's the way 61% of snaps in total. So not adjusting for context or anything, 61% of snaps with 2 high safeties. It's over, man.
That doesn't have anything to do with play action. That doesn't have anything to do with
no, sure.
You can run play action. Like the Falcons didn't run play action once per NFL Next Gen. I don't know if there's like a glitch in the data or a glitch in the brains of the Falcons coaches.
It's because Kirk Cousins can't plant hard enough to change direction off of his leg to do it.
That's not good.
So we're nervous about the Falcons. It's not going to be the elite offense we were kind of hoping for.
They're on the showdown slate, so it's a little bit harder to say, I'm buying. If let's say Kyle Pitts was $4,800, same price as Isaiah Likely. Sure, I'd be all in. If he was 9% projected, I'd be like, well, I'm just going to play him on every team. But I think we'll learn a lot more because my take, Corinne, I wonder your thought on this, was I just thought, well, maybe he just needed to go out and play. Maybe Cousins just needed to go out and like get hit a couple times and just like test his leg out and see what happened with some live ammunition because he didn't play in preseason at all. Maybe that's all it is. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not that 0% play action rate, like, not that you gotta like play action all the time, but like that's real weird. Like that's you're kind of like looking for stuff that points to maybe some larger things that are going on, and that would be one where I'm like, that feels like a red flag for like the whole operation, which might include Cousins' health as part of that operation. Like maybe these guys would love to run play action and they just don't feel like they can. But for our purposes, that's like worse. Actually, I'd rather them just not be sharp than not feel that they can call play action for Cousins because of his Achilles.
I'll the thing that I am most disappointed in from this week, and I watched. We talked about Davis. I talked about it last week because I watched your last episode of ADP chasing prior to the season, and there was a lot of negativity towards the Cardinals, who I had drafted a lot of. So I was like, I don't love this that you guys are super negative, like hearing negative things about Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride. It was just like throwing a lot of water on that on the Cardinals. So I was pretty disappointed in that. I was hoping that you guys were wrong and the Cardinals were going to come out and be awesome last week. Marvin Harrison Jr., 1 reception for 4 yards on 3 targets. Apparently the slowest player in NFL history. I mean, all the vibes are bad.
Yeah, basically Dearness Johnson at wide receiver is sort of what happened there.
Kyler comes out and says it's not my job to get him the ball. Just like the vibes are so bad. The vibes are so bad for the Cardinals. I
think this is such an overreaction. Spoiler alert for the wide receiver.
I think it is too. Yeah,
I think that's just a normal thing for Kyler to say. Really?
Is it? It's not my job to get my number 1 wide receiver the ball.
Maybe because Greg Dortch is the number 1 wide receiver. That's
okay.
That's actually. I'm not being sarcastic. I don't know how you could watch that game and not have that takeaway. Like that's the way they view it right now.
I mean, that's bad. That's bad for Marvin Harrison, though. That's
Marvin Harrison. Sure. The listed depth chart that the team put out had Marvin Harrison after Greg Dortch on the literal depth chart.
That's concerning. So, as somebody who did a fair amount of Marvin Harrison Jr. in the first round,
concerning.
Yeah, that's all bad. You're like, oh,
I'm looking at the data here though, and Davis is so this is like I try not to dive too deep into the first read stuff until we have like a few weeks because it's like it takes down a small sample.
I think he had 6 first read targets, if I remember correct.
He had a first read target on 27% of his routes, which is like an elite number. Just one game.
It's like less than Cup.
Yeah, but Harrison was at 8% and Michael Wilson was at 3%. So he was just crushing these guys on the first reads.
I think it was the weather. They were not running a real offense because they were afraid of the Buffalo wind.
Yep, 25-mile-per-hour winds. I'm not totally. I'm not panicking yet. It's also a really tough defense. Like Buffalo has a great defense. I watched a clip this morning discussing the way they were covered was also a lot of like double coverage on Marvin Harrison. So the Bills were really trying to take Marvin Harrison away. So I'm not panicking yet. I think that if he does, repeats this week against this Rams defense, then I'm going to panic. But right now, I'm not ready to fully give up on Marvin Harrison just yet. But we'll start. We'll go position by position here, starting with the quarterback position. And Davis, I'll start with you. Any quarterbacks that you are particularly excited about this week in GPPs?
Yeah, relative to the field, it seems like Kyler, obviously, and this is probably going to be a theme of us doing this show over the next couple weeks. But something I'm seeing with ownership right now is Jaden Daniels and Daniel Jones are getting really propped up in the Sims. I mean, isn't Kyler Murray just going to run for more yards this season and a greater yards per carry than Daniel Jones? And the Rams defense is just like, we projected it to be bad. It was not particularly good against Lions. I guess it was better than we thought, forced them to go to overtime or whatever. So Kyler is like kind of my number one. And for what it's worth, like the sim products like Kyler as well. And it does feel, to me, it feels like a Mahomes week where it's against the Bengals. So like, let's say theoretically you're going into the second half and it's 28-10. And if it was against, I don't know, the Seahawks, they would just shut it down. It'd just be, Pacheco and Carson Steele. But because it's the Bengals, you get one more drive of them trying. So, however much that alters your projection. But the thing I really like about playing Mahomes versus playing Jaden Daniels, Daniel Jones, I think if I'm playing Jaden Daniels, I'm playing him naked with none of his pass catchers.
Yeah.
And if I'm playing Jones, I'm playing him with Neighbors, who still, the 13% target share last week. I think it's going to improve 13% targets per route run. But the thing about Mahomes, just from like this is very 60 IQ DFS thinking, but it's actually just easier to wind up on a good team when you play Mahomes because he's never in the winning lineup without one of his pass catchers and pretty likely to be in an optimal lineup with two of his pass catchers. And one of his pass catchers is the number one optimal play of the week, Rashee Rice. So if you put Worthy or Kelsey in with him, which you can do very easily salary-wise this week, well, you only have to get 8 spots, and you just solved 3 of them with one decision. So that, again, very 60 IQ, but that is where I'm at with quarterback this week.
Yeah, but I think I love the idea of playing the quarterbacks that you can more easily stack. Like in general, I don't want to be running out quarterbacks naked. And I agree with you, like Jaden Daniels, I don't feel that comfortable stacking yet. I think when I play Jaden Daniels this week, if I do, it will be with Terry McLaurin. I still will stack him up. But yeah, you feel much better about the stacking options with Mahomes. And like you say, you get multiple stacking options. You can feel good about your lineup with multiple stacking options. I don't feel that great about stacking up Jaden Daniels. Maybe we can go to Davis's guy, Zach Ertz, along with Terry McLaurin with Jaden Daniels. You could try the double stack, but like really what you're hoping for is the rushing upside with Jaden Daniels.
The problem is tight end is so strong this week that you're really giving up a lot of projected points to play Ertz.
I hope tight end is strong this week. Another big mistake I made in best ball season was drafting a lot of elite tight ends, and that has not looked good so far. So yeah, hopefully Zach Ertz is not the guy we need this week, but he's at least cheap. But yeah, we like you say that we do have a lot of inexpensive good tight end options as well. So it does feel a lot better this week. Pat, any quarterbacks that you are any other quarterbacks that you're very into this week?
Honestly, those are kind of the guys that jumped out to me too. I like the Mahomes call a lot. And yeah, I'm interested in Daniels, but I do agree. I don't really want to stack Daniels. That was kind of one of my big takeaways is I'm not really into McLaurin this week. And I don't, Ertz is just, he's dust. So I don't think I'm going to go there either. So that immediately makes him a little bit less intriguing because I would prefer to stack at least a single stack. But yeah, Mahomes is the guy that's kind of jumping out to me the most. They weren't super pass heavy because they didn't need to be, but they were definitely kind of the Chiefs. I think they were returning to what we want
It
them
was
to
a
be.
classic Chiefs fucking around game where like Mahomes throws this awful interception. They dedicate an end zone target to Juju Smith-Schuster. Like classic, the Chiefs should have scored 40, but they scored 28 because they kind of just messed around a little bit.
Yeah, and one of the takeaways to me is that like they were still doing a lot of underneath stuff. Like Mahomes was still throwing very shallowly, and at the same time, like they do have Xavier Worthy who can hit these big plays. So if you're doing like Mahomes, Rice, Worthy, they can very easily get there together. Where Rice is getting a lot of underneath volume and kind of stealing that Travis Kelce role a little bit, and then Worthy, you're just hoping for those big plays. So and then it all works together quite nicely for Mahomes.
Yeah.
A few more names that I want to throw at you guys. Davis, what do you think about Lamar Jackson? I mean, we just saw last week, you can run all over this Raiders defense. A lot of people might gravitate towards, I mean, I guess the projected ownership doesn't really steam toward Derrick Henry, last I checked. But I think more people will want to go to Derrick Henry, just like take advantage of this defense. Lamar Jackson could also just have another game where he rushes for over 100 yards. Any interest in a Lamar Jackson stack?
I think the issue you have with Lamar is my personal projection for him would be that he barely runs this week. Like he'll probably, I think he ran 16 times against the Chiefs for 114 yards. I think he gets 8 rushing attempts this week, and you better hope that if he scores 2 rushing touchdowns, they happen in the first half. I think the Ravens gain every edge. You know, they press every edge. They go all the analytical stuff they get. The Raiders give up every edge. So like not only are the Ravens a much better team than them, but just from a game theory perspective, they're so much more likely to get blown out because they do everything wrong that it's hard for me to imagine this being a game that you get 4 quarters from Lamar.
Yeah.
Probably won't need to go hard all 4 quarters. I guess that's true. Pat, what do you think? Are you on the same page as Davis there?
I'm on the same page. I mean, he's very expensive, and I want to play it through the running game, I think.
So I guess we'll talk about Derrick Henry when we get to the running game. All right. So you guys are not in on Lamar Jackson being like big runner this year. I'm sort of hopeful that he's just going to run more in general this year, which is sort of counterintuitive, but I think just like the fake the handoff and Lamar takes off. Like
no,
we saw that so many
think
times
he
last week.
will. I think he will. It's just I guess maybe I'm over. I just think, and this is like East Coast or West Coast team traveling east. It's like literally all the things that of like you check in red zone at 1:15 and the Ravens have 24 points and you just watch Gardner Minshew take his 5th sack of the game. Like it's going to be really bad.
That's exactly what's going to happen. I don't even need to watch that game now. The thing with Lamar, like 9 of his runs last week were scrambles, and watching the game, like he was just like, we're not losing this game, kind of playoff mode Lamar, it felt like. And this is not that game. Like he does not need to do that. He does not need to put himself at risk in that kind of way. I don't think that he's not gonna I don't see it as a huge outlier week 1, but like that's a certain version of Lamar that he doesn't necessarily need to deploy in this setup.
Yeah, that's very, very true. We just got some breaking news, and I'm trying to find the price tag on Zach Charbonnet this week because apparently Kenneth Walker.
He's 5,800. The pricing sort of anticipated it a little bit.
Okay.
So he's like still good, but if McIntosh or Helani plays more than sort of the projection, then he becomes like an awful play. Or not an awful, but not nearly as strong.
Okay, good. So he's not going to be like a lock in our lineups at the very least. He's not like the min price 4,500 whatever. That's good that they did dress him up a little bit. Anthony Richardson, I mean he's played I think 4 full games in his NFL career now and puts up like an average of 27 fantasy points per game. Playing against the Packers without Jordan Love, so they're not really going to need to be, I don't know if they're going to air it out against the Packers when the Packers aren't probably going to be able to score all that much. Not sure what to do here, but he's just been very good whenever he plays in a very small sample size. Davis, do you have any interest in Anthony Richardson this week?
I think he's probably better in like Battle Royale or whatever. Just like how Malik Willis, since he was drafted 2022, he is 72 out of 72 in players with at least 100 pass attempts and EPA per play. Like this could be a I just don't know. I just don't know how much they get pushed.
Yeah, no, I think
they
think
don't
that's
get pushed.
reasonable.
You do know. They
Right.
don't.
Yeah. Probably not going to get pushed a ton by Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Maybe Josh Jacobs can just have a game and keep them in it. I don't know. It's hard to get too excited about it, but yeah, I think I looked up 26.2 fantasy points per game in the very small sample size of games that Anthony Richardson has finished. So it's hard to like cross him off completely. It's just this game environment does not set up to be a huge Anthony Richardson game. All right. Pat, if you have any thoughts on Anthony Richardson, you can share them. And then I also curious about Dak Prescott. I think it's going to be pretty low owned, and Dallas does have one of the highest implied team totals on the slate. Again, it's you're paying up for Dak Prescott. It doesn't feel like the best matchup with the Saints, but seems like a reasonable. Like he's one of those guys that we know that they can break the slate. Just a Dak CD stack could absolutely put up 65 fantasy points, be the stack that you need, and nobody's going to be on it. Is that getting too cute on this slate? Do we have too many good options to consider Dak Prescott?
No, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that intriguing. I mean, we don't really know anything about the Saints. Like the Saints defense. I mean,
historically good, but
yeah, Bryce Young was throwing deep against them. No, it didn't work at all. But it was kind of interesting that he was like
Leggett looks pretty good, man.
Yeah, Leggett actually does look.
Leggett looked pretty silky.
Yeah, I know. But that's interesting to me, and it's more condensed with Ferguson out. I mean, Jalen Tolbert. I don't know what we were thinking this summer. That's not going to happen.
Hey man, he was out there.
Yeah, he sure was, and didn't get targeted at all. I think you could just do Cooks and CD or just CD. I find that interesting. Yeah.
All right, one final. You got to do one like disgusting game stack. I think I have to at least talk about it. I'm sort of intrigued by this Chargers Panthers game. I mean, you just talk about Xavier Leggett looking silky out there. Is that? I mean, two bad offenses meet two bad defenses. This feels like a game that nobody's going to want to play, but like maybe the offenses just win out. Justin Herbert, theoretically a very good quarterback, didn't look that great last week. Is that too cute playing that game stack with Justin Herbert as a quarterback? I don't think I'm going to Bryce Young, but like Justin Herbert with a Lad McConkey, run it back with Chuba Hubbard. Maybe, I don't know how I want to play it exactly, but I'm sort of intrigued by just like leaning into the chaos of bad offenses versus bad defenses. Davis, what do you think? Is there just no fantasy point potential there?
In my first run of Sims, I got Justin Herbert with a 1.9% optimal rate, which is less than Derek Carr, less than Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow. So basically, I think it's too cute because this game is going to have about 87 total plays run. The Chargers are going to have like a 10-minute drive to open the game where 4 guys get a carry. Darius Davis is involved, and it just like, I don't think it's gonna work out.
All right.
I'm not into it either. The one game I want to shout out here, and I think it's stackable maybe from both sides, is the Tampa Bay Lions game.
Oh yeah.
I'm really interested in Amon-Ra. We'll get to that, but I think you could play that through Baker. And what I think is interesting about the Buccaneers is that like I don't really have a great sense of who they are. They had a really quick passing game last week that actually really favored Chris Godwin. He had this really shallow 4.4 ADOT, but then Evans gets the touchdowns. But it could be the case that that's like kind of who they are, that they're just going to try to get the ball out really quickly with the passing game because we didn't expect the Commanders to have this insane pass rush. Like that game plan is strange to me that you come out week one. It maybe doesn't say that much about who they were playing, but it tells you a lot about who they are. And so Godwin could maybe just kind of rack up short receptions this season, making him pretty interesting, potentially making Mayfield interesting. But then on the Goff side, you could go Goff. And Gibbs is going to be mostly playing it through the receiving, but he was getting a lot of work as a receiver. So I could see going like Goff, Gibbs, Amon-Ra, and Godwin. Like that's like a little game stack here. And this is one of those games. I mean, we got a pretty high total, high team totals. Like this would be like a game in smaller field stuff you could actually game stack, I think.
I always struggle with the formatting of these shows because like we separate out quarterback and wide receivers. And now it's like, I want to get into the wide receivers. Now you brought up Chris Godwin and stuff. Maybe we should just like change the formatting.
Yeah,
at
we
some
can do
point.
we can do
We
wide
could do
receiver.
we could do games.
Do you want to? I mean, you did games
Yeah.
last year. We decided to go position by position this year. I'd be fine with probably too late in this particular episode.
Yeah, in this show, but
game by game. But
yeah,
I'd be open to doing it going forward. But you brought up Chris Godwin, and just thinking about Chris Godwin, what did you guys think about the slot participation rate? Because they, you know, all offseason was like, oh, Chris Godwin going to be used more in the slot. He's been successful in the slot. He's excited to move back to the slot. He moved up from like 38% of his routes run from the slot last year to 50%, which I don't know. I was kind of expecting more, but he also just had a monster game, so hard to complain about it. Is Chris Godwin just going to take a step forward this year? Do you think that the role is good enough now that we can expect him to, you know, just continue to move forward as an elite fantasy option? Because he started last year pretty weak. Then his wife complained about his usage, and after that, like legitimately saw a big bump after that moment, which was pretty funny. A little bit better late in the year, and now great first game. I can't decide if that's just like they were playing the Commanders. Of course, he had a good game, or like maybe his role is actually better now. How do you guys feel about the Godwin usage from last week?
I don't think the slot stuff matters. Like Gretsch talks about this. Ben Gretsch talks about like how it's really less about like where you line up and where you're going to get targeted. And what I thought was interesting that Jalen McMillan had a really deep ADOT. It was like 17 something. Now, you know, he could get used more shallowly throughout the course of the year. It's just one game. But Godwin was getting a lot of the short stuff. And if that's kind of his, I don't care if he's getting it on the – I mean, Deontay Johnson gets targeted short all the time on the outside. Like, it doesn't matter if you're going to get – it just doesn't matter to me. Right. Like, the slot usage is kind of indicative of a different conversation, which is like, are you going to be able to feast on the more shallow targets? And we got that last week, even without him being exclusively out of the slot.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can continue. Just like let's lump in the wide receivers. Let's finish talking about the stacks. Just include who we want to include in our stack. So we talked about Kyler earlier being one of our favorite quarterbacks to stack. Now let's just talk about who we want to stack with Kyler. And Davis, it sounded like you might have some hot takes here for Kyler, and then we'll do one-offs as well later after we finish stacking. We'll talk about one-off tight ends, wide receivers, anybody else we like. But starting with the Cardinals, I know you sounded like you liked Kyler. I'm on the same page as you. I'm going all in on that game. Who do you like pairing with Kyler this week?
I think if you play Kyler with Marvin Harrison Jr., you can play the stonest of chalk around him. I mean, if in the spy or the red zone, I think you might see Marvin Harrison Jr. under 1% owned, which you almost never see things like that. But literally 10 days ago, we were drafting this player amongst like the 15 best players in fantasy. Everyone was aligned universally. I actually wasn't, which is kind of funny that I'm the one delivering this thing. Because I wasn't such a big Marvin Harrison Jr. guy relative to cost. But now that the whole world has decided he stinks because Hayden Winks posted like one clip of him running a slow route. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what you do. Like
Hayden Winks buried him, man. Marvin Harrison had this amazing career. He's literally Marvin Harrison's son.
He's literally Marvin Harrison. Wait for him to do it to Luke McCaffrey next. He's gonna be like Luke McCaffrey man. Couldn't even. Dude, they almost did the Luke McCaffrey trick play. Like they were gonna do it, and then Jaden Daniels messed up. Jaden Daniels threw it forward instead of backward. Oh. They almost did it. Yeah, and you can do Kyler, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cooper Kupp. You can even play Kyron in that lineup. You can go or Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson. You can do whatever you want. You can go stone chalk. You can play Jordan Mason in that lineup. All of that stuff.
Yeah,
and you're still. I mean, actually, your lineup is going to sim bad. Like you put that in the sim, and it's going to sim bad because the projections on Marvin Harrison Jr. are bad. But if you gave Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't know, let's call it 15 points and whatever you did, and then simmed him out, it'd be like very high ROI.
Yeah, if you just assume that the player who projects poorly projects better.
Yeah, simple, easy game.
Easy game. That's all you got to do.
If I just give my lineups 200 points when I put it in the solver, like, oh my God, you should see how high my ROI is, Neil.
Are you playing Stafford at all? So that's the other side of it. Is like I thought about Stafford just like never has ceiling games. It feels like it's like I really want to play all these Rams receivers, but then like
I need to 100% look this up. I looked it up at one point in the offseason, and I can do it here for a second. But I'm fairly certain that his high in DraftKings points the year that Cooper Kupp set the all-time record for PPR points in a season, his high in a game was 28, which is not very many points.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm like, man, the matchup is great. I want to play all of his receivers, his tight end. Like, I just want to like load up on these Rams, and then don't really want to play Stafford, which I don't know, feels like potentially a mistake, but also like you say, like we just haven't really seen it from him in the past. Now NFL, it's like we're always dealing with like sort of small sample sizes. So if he does throw for 4 touchdowns, which he could, he will have a good game, but I'm probably not going to be playing a ton of Stafford. Pat, do you see? Go ahead.
I agree. I just agree on the Stafford thing, like in part because Kupp gets there so much, like just through receptions. Like, he
True.
Just, like,
PPR scam.
Like PPR scam. So why do I need the quarterback? Like it's all the whole play with Kupp is like it's just all Kupp, and he's going to catch 1 million balls. So that's Stafford to be okay, but it's not necessarily going to be a huge game even if Kupp goes off.
But what if I also want to play like Tyler Johnson, and I'm hoping for like some of those big plays to come to fruition? I don't know.
Stafford. I have confirmation. 0 quarterback 1 finishes the year Cooper Kupp set the record for most PPR points of all time, and his high was 29.5. So I was wrong. I was 29.5.
So not quarterback good. 1 overall, not
Pretty
like top 12 quarterback.
Recollection.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. No. Like so. Like honestly, I think this is I can't tell if this is 130 IQ or 60 IQ. Do your Tampa Bay Detroit stack. Do your Rams Arizona stack, and then just put Jaden Daniels in it, or put Justin Fields in it, or put Daniel Jones in it. Just be like, oh, I'm going to get this gross garbage, Mitch Trubisky rushing production with like 3 interceptions, but I'm not going to have to stack any of the wide receivers with it.
I could especially see that if you're doing that in the Lions side, like trying to throw Montgomery in there or something, because I think that like maybe it doesn't all flow through the passing game, and that's one way where actually like having Goff isn't really that helpful or whatever.
What is Stafford's? I mean, Stafford's price tag is because that's I guess 6,000. So he's not super cheap. If he was like 5,400, I definitely make the argument that like, well, he doesn't really need to be the wide receiver 1 at that price tag. 6,000 is getting a little bit steep. Like he is close enough to Jaden Daniels, to these other just omega upside quarterbacks that, yeah, probably not the best play this week. I don't know. Maybe I'll run 1 or 2 out there, but yeah, definitely not a play that I'm super leaning into. I just love the other side of it so much as well. Just going with Kyler, who we know has that upside, feels a lot better. Pat, how are you playing? Are you planning on playing any Kyler, Pat, and how are you planning on stacking up that game in general?
I think McBride, not to take us now to tight end, we're supposed to go to receiver, but I think McBride would be the way I would want to go. It did feel like week 1, we on ADP chase, when we had the debate at the end there of like, okay, is Harrison overdrafted? And I was like, well, maybe not. And, maybe he's the dude, and McBride's kind of, just feasted without real target competition last year. And that take looks real bad because he now has target competition in Harrison, and it's flowing through him. So that would be, I would be most interested in McBride. The Dort stuff feels like flukier or less likely to repeat this week to me than the McBride stuff, because we saw that for like a half a season last year, and we were drafting like it was going to happen again.
Can we just throw out last week though, like 25-mile-per-hour winds, really tough defense in the Bills? Like I want to see one more game of sample size before I make any big conclusions about this offense. Maybe we have enough, because we did see, Michael Wilson just saw 2 targets in that game. I don't know. I'm hesitant to just like to read too much into that one game, because it just feels like such a small sample size, and it didn't really.
We thought McBride had a chance to be the guy, especially early on in the season. So
yeah,
I love playing Kyler with McBride too. I just like, if you do that is going to be much more combinatorically. Sure. So you need to be like, you probably can't play Kupp on that line, or if you can, you got to do something real weird there.
Yeah,
but McBride's not supposed to be super chalky, so I mean he won't be 0% owned like Harrison, but.
I think when we get to Sunday that he ends up maybe being even the most owned tight end. Because this total is just so it's going to keep climbing, and his like by the time you get to Sunday, people have had time to digest all the content. McBride was tight end 2 and expected points last week, like all this stuff. To me, it feels like it's going that direction.
He's also kind of in a. There are not many tight ends in his price tier. Like there are a lot of cheaper tight ends that look pretty good. Like there are a lot of like min price tight ends that look really good this week. There are not so many higher priced. I mean, we've got Kelsey at 6,200, McBride at 6,000, which I think will increase their ownership a little bit. Just the fact that we have so few in that kind of price tier, and people are going to be like, all right, I want to pay up a tight end in this lineup, throw McBride in there. So I think you're probably right that we see them get steamed up a little bit. The higher end tight ends. What's the latest ownership on? So I want to hear your guys' takes on the Rams receivers, since we're talking about this game stack. One of my, I know Davis had some hot takes that he wanted to get out there. I wonder if we're on the same page about these Rams receivers, because some of my hottest takes come from the Rams receiving core. I'm really into Tyler Johnson this week. Is a guy that they talk about he's the next man up. I wouldn't be that shocked to see him leapfrog Demarcus Robinson, which is kind of funny because Davis and I talked about this during Hot Best Ball Summer. I was super into Demarcus Robinson. Now he like projects pretty well, and I'm like, but what if Tyler Johnson just surpasses him? He was really good last week, so I kind of like playing a low owned Tyler Johnson at 3,300. I want to double check the projected ownership there, but I think it was pretty low last I checked. How are you guys playing the Rams? I mean, Cooper Kupp obviously is like the chalk of the slate after getting 21 targets last week. He is just awesome. But then beyond Cooper Kupp, how are you guys playing the Rams pass catchers in general?
Yeah, I mean, I prefer Tyler Johnson just because I'm stubborn. And I just don't. I think the way Robinson kills you is if he scores twice.
Yeah,
and that feels unlikely. He did get an end zone target in that game. Neil, you're not going to know about this. Corinne will be very familiar with this. People who are as much of dynasty virgins as Corinne and I have been keeping a light on for Tyler Johnson for a long time. He outproduced Rashad Bateman when they played together in Minnesota.
Seems less impressive now than it did then.
Seems less impressive
True.
now. But yeah, just kind of always one of those guys I thought could play a little bit. There's also this weird thing where Whittington might play more this week than he did last week. He only played the 2 snaps, but one of the snaps he did play was an end-around touchdown that got called back by like kind of a wonky holding penalty. And his snaps seem like they would be a replacement for Robinson if I'm reading stuff right. But it just feels very fragile playing, honestly, either one of them, because you do not build a functional offense where one guy is getting 21 targets. Like that is not the recipe for an offense that's built to sustain and score points over the long term. So there's like some crater risk there. I don't know. Crane, what do you think?
Well, you build an offense and then you execute an offense. And
right.
Sean McVay builds the offense, but Matthew Stafford has to execute it. And I think if this game is what we want it to be and it's back and forth, he's just going to Kupp. He's going to Kupp.
To Kupp.
And if he's going to Kupp too much, there's only one way that McVay can make sure he doesn't, and that's to run the ball. Ooh. And that's where I actually could see if we talk about like what's the secondary option to Kupp that gets more work because Puka Nacua is out. Maybe they just lean on Kyren Williams a little bit more in the run game. Like I don't think he's going to get thrown to a bunch. That's not really how they do it, but I could see them leaning on Kyren a little bit here and, maybe being a little bit less pass heavy.
No, that's definitely what they're going to do. Kyren, it's kind of funny. Like if Jordan Mason didn't exist, I feel like, and Breece Hall, I feel like at the cover of every DFS article and stuff this week would be Kyren. But I mean, are you guys really going to be surprised if Kyren scores more points than Breece this week? I am not at all. That's so possible.
Yeah.
No, I would be. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm pretty nervous about all these like low priced Rams in part because I don't want to like the simple thing to do is go Kupp, one of these low price guys in Stafford, right? Or like maybe even you triple it with Parkinson or something. But like if a lot of people are on that and the Stafford part of it doesn't give your lineup a ton of ceiling because he doesn't really have these huge ceiling games, like you're mostly just trying to capture receptions with Kupp and just underpriced volume with I don't know. I don't think it like puts me in a place where I'm feeling that great about like the lineup as a whole.
Yeah.
Especially if other people are on these dudes. Like it doesn't seem like they're going to be under the radar at all. So.
But are other people on these dudes? I mean, I'm looking at I'm trying to find the latest projected ownership, but I've seen like less than 5% everywhere.
No,
you think
they will
come in higher?
Well, what's happening is that we're doing this on Friday.
Yeah.
So the field by Sunday is going to have made their decision between DeMarcus Robinson, Yoshi Voss, Tyler Johnson, Alan Lazarus, Wandale Robinson. All of these guys, they'll have made their choice by Sunday. And, I don't know exactly who the field is going to choose, but whichever one of those guys projects fractionally better in like a blended optimal, and my guess is it's going to be DeMarcus Robinson.
Yeah.
It definitely will be if Leone has anything to say about it. That guy will be. I mean, we saw this last week with Yoshi Voss. Yoshi Voss didn't project that much better than like Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, whatever. But he was like, what was he, 40, 50% owned in some of the single entry stuff?
The other thing with Yoshi Voss was he was comfy, right? You're like, I know it's comfy. How could this go bad? I mean, they're not going to lose.
He literally did run 100% of the routes.
He did. He was
he ran 100% of routes. Yeah, and this, I think these guys, whoever gets anointed, like you're saying, will feel comfy because we like the game environment here.
Yeah. Are we nervous about the Burrow wrist, by the way? I don't know if you guys saw the water. I mean, we all saw the water bottle thing.
That was also
what's the water bottle thing? Because the whole thing is he can't pick up the water bottle, but then he picks it up. He flicks it up.
That's what I thought. I thought it was like people are way overreacting to this. He's like picking that up like it's just like an awkward angle. He picks it up, he flips it up to himself. People are like, it kind of looks like he's like, limp wristing kind of, but it's like no, he just like picked it up and like
No, he threw
I'm
it
with
up.
you. I'm with you.
Threw it up to
Major
himself.
overreaction.
It actually showed wrist strength.
Exactly.
So,
thank you.
I've been, as a little bit of self-care this week, I've been reading like Bengals, like beat writers and blogs and stuff. And let me tell you,
I think you might need to work on your self-care.
Let me tell you, these people are really upset. And something that is rebounding through these articles and these blogs is that it's a real wind horse meme. Why won't Burrow say his wrist is 100%? Why won't? And that's why he won't just come out and say it, because it's not. Now, that being said, you want to talk about an all-time flop leg, it would definitely be Yoshi Voss in this game against the Chiefs when they really don't want Chase to beat them. There's a little bit of animosity there. And they just don't want, like, it's actually very similar to how teams treated the Chiefs before. It's just, we'll just don't let Kelsey beat you, and then they can't beat us. I like in a world where Alan Lazard is chalk. I'm not. No. Absolutely not. I'd much rather play Yoshi Voss. Lazard got one target when the game was still in question at all. The rest of it came when Tyrod Taylor
and he dropped
was the quarterback.
He bounced off his hands.
He scored a touchdown. Oh,
well, then you're wrong. He got an early target on a third or fourth down and bounced right off his hands.
Sure. Okay. No, you're right. That did happen. And then he scored the free play touchdown, which really a Rodgers free play shouldn't count. A Rodgers free play, honestly, something just comes over him when he gets a free play. Like, honestly, those stats shouldn't count.
Unfair to the defense.
No, just predictively. You can't.
Right.
Use
we should pull them out.
Right. You should strip that out. I agree.
Okay, I see.
With myself, I agree with myself.
You agree with yourself? No one else made the point. You just answered with "I agree."
I feel like we just kind of like went completely off the rails there for a while. We were doing quarterback stacking. We got into Kyren Williams there. We just got totally got. And then I asked you about Joe Burrow. So not really staying on the rails so far with the stacking. But I do like your point about Kyren Williams. Probably just like I'm probably wish casting too much with these secondary, tertiary Rams receivers, because I really want DeMarcus Robinson to be a thing, so I can say, Davis, I told you so, because we had that conversation over the summer. So I really want DeMarcus Robinson to be a thing, but then now I'm also like, Tyler Johnson projecting for sub 5% ownership, intriguing to me in DFS. And then in the end, it's going to be 21 targets to Cooper Kupp, another 8 to Kyren Williams. Kyron's going to have 24 carries, and it's just going to be nobody else touches the ball. Is probably the outcome here.
This was like about as nice of a week one as Kyren could have hoped for, right? Where you're getting like now
Corum didn't play.
Corum didn't play. It's Ronnie Rivers. He played over 90% of the snaps. Like it's just Kyron again. It's the Kyron 2023 experience again. And now Nakua's out. And so, like, it's probably just like when we know how the Rams tend to do it, it tends to concentrate to the guys they really believe in. So, I mean, I know that Kyron is going to be very popular, but it could be like a situation where he should be mega chalk and doesn't end up getting there with this like cover, this fairly thin, fragile cover.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting more interested in Kyron the more I talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's hold off just for 1 second on continuing with the running backs. Let's just finish the conversation about. So we talked about kind of the stacks. No, I mean, it's my fault. We had a whole thing, and then I was like, no, let's bring in stacks, and then just threw the whole thing off the rails. But let's just get back to like one-off receivers, and then we'll do one-off tight ends, and then running back. So any other receivers that we haven't talked about? You threw in Yoshi Voss as an option. That you threw in Lazard as a guy that you don't want to play, who probably is going to be somewhat chalky. I know it's hard because like we're all thinking through the stacks, but like any like one-off wide receivers that we are interested in playing on this slate. If any of you have one that you want to throw out, feel free. I mean, Lad McConkey 4,900 to me, like even if you don't want to play it through Justin Herbert at all, seems like a fine play, especially if if Josh Palmer misses. Looked like Josh Palmer showed up on the injury report today. Pretty promising usage from Lad in week 1. Now he gets the weakest of weak defenses in the Panthers. I sort of think that's an interesting one-off play, even if you think it's too fish to play Justin Herbert. I think Lad could still be an interesting
I didn't
one-off
say
play.
that. All I did was read you optimal probabilities. The computer said it wasn't good.
The computer called me a fish. It was not Davis calling me a fish. All right, that's fair. That is non-derogatorily fair.
Messenger, Neil.
Yeah.
Honestly, my process this year is going to be the most computer based ever, because I've been doing a lot of work with Brian Hooper and Dan Nerdy Tenor on Battle Royale sims, and I'm like,
oh, nice.
There's just something here that just like the computer just knows. As long as I tell the computer the ball knowledge, the computer is going to tell me how to apply that ball knowledge best. You know. That they and because when you Neil, you've been playing DFS for a long time, you get this. Like, what will end up happening is you get all these ideas about the slate and about the plays, but then when you start to piece them all together, and then you look back, you're like, I just gave up 50 projected points versus the optimal. Like, I just gave like there was no reason for me to play Tyler Johnson and Mike Gesicki in the same lineup. There was absolutely no reason for that.
Yeah, if you adjust things too much, too many manual like overrides of like, oh no, I want to boost this player by 2 fantasy points, because I think like the computer doesn't really get it. Like the base projection doesn't really tell the full story. So I want to boost up that projection a little bit, and then you end up with just a lineup that does not project well. Yeah, I've definitely had that issue in using Optimize in the past. So probably just sticking with like the true range of outcomes, probably a better idea in general with the Sims. But yeah, I struggle with that because like I want to just be like, you know what, I think this player's range of outcomes, this ceiling we haven't seen it yet. So like the base projection isn't going to account for this player's potential ceiling. And then I boost their projection, but then you do it too many times. And then all those players that you boosted end up in the same lineup. And like, that's just bad process. If you end up with all of those players, you want maybe 1 or 2 of them in a lineup. But that can be kind of the issue in using all of these tools at our disposal now. So then you just see people just click the button and win is probably the better approach to adjusting too much.
I did want to, I wanted to just note Deebo Samuel, who I think is pretty interesting.
Cash game play.
Yeah, cash game. I mean, he's just the nuts.
Well, but I mean, we've got. Why can't he be a GPP play?
I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying
cash game.
I'm saying you just put him in every lineup and then figure out how it works around that.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, like, if you took especially I just mentioned I like Kyron, but like I'm probably not going to play like Kyron and Jordan Mason together, and so that would get me off the Mason chalk as well. So he's got, I think maybe he's going to be, plenty owned, but at the same time does probably give you leverage on Mason, at least a little bit. So I think he's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I want to be clear. When I say cash game play, I don't mean like don't play him in GPPs. I just mean like he is like projects really well point per dollar. He's going to be in the cash games. You can still obviously play him in GPPs going to be he'll be owned, but like he should be. Like he projects super well. Yeah, I like that call. That is a name that like we should probably mention the guy that projects so well he's going to be in cash games. That's a good call out there. We
where you guys at on Ayuk? Because I think he actually looks pretty interesting too, as like a little bit more under the radar.
I kind of like it. Davis shaking his head. Davis not into Ayuk. I do think like
he's not in shape, dude. He said it.
But he's had 4 more days to practice. Davis, come on, he's in shape now. No,
he only needs to be a little bit more in shape. Like he just gets a little bit closer to that ball. He's got a touchdown. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly.
I think Kittle is a more appealing way to play that. If you wanted to.
That's interesting.
Some of the other guys I would consider one-offs without caring that much about the game. I mean, how about CeeDee Lamb, the only other player this late who projects for over 20 points? He's got a dome game. Dome, you ever heard of it? Like literally,
nice. We like that.
He's gonna be like 9% owned as the third highest projected player this late. You never see stuff like that. It's just because Rashee Rice is so close to him in projection. Like I think he's like literally like a point less, and he's so much cheaper. But he's really strong. I think this projected ownership on Garrett Wilson I'm seeing is wrong. He's like 15% or something, and then I don't know, maybe the best wide receiver in the NFL. We're 50 minutes into the show. Justin Jefferson. Ever heard of him?
Yep.
Yeah, he seems pretty good.
That guy.
And it doesn't seem like people are going to be on him. And he's still great. So, And he was double teamed on half of his routes last week.
And Darnold.
So was he going to be 100? Like he's still got his. You can't stop this dude.
Darnold played quite well. He really did. He just made the grown-up throws, started out the game 12 of 12, like kind of just looked a lot better than the quarterback on the other side of the game, I'll tell you that much.
Number 3 overall pick several years ago has looked bad, but like his most recent stint in the NFL as a backup quarterback looked pretty good for Sam Darnold. So as a Vikings fan, I've been sort of like crossing my fingers, like maybe he is just like he needed to mature a little bit. Maybe now he's had, he has the talent, didn't have the right mindset. I don't know, whatever preparation in the NFL. Maybe he's matured a little bit. Maybe he's ready now. So I'm hopeful for Sam Darnold.
Let me ask you, just to go back to the Garrett Wilson point. What do you guys think of this as kind of like a theory of the slate to some extent, where like we see where this really cheap wide receiver chalk settles? Like you're saying, Davis, it could go a number of different ways. But
my guess right now is it settles on Robinson, by the way. Robinson or Lazard.
If it goes to Robinson, then we go to Kyron. If it goes to Lazard, then we go to Garrett Wilson. Because are people going to like double Rodgers?
That's a good idea.
It's probably just a cheap punt play. Yeah, so you get the leverage on Garrett Wilson. I think it's a pretty nice play.
We did just get CMC officially out. So that was something. I don't know if you guys saw the quotes. He was saying like, no, it's, my mentality is I'm good to go. And like, if you listen to the whole clip, it was like, that's the way that you should always prepare. If anybody says, I think I'm going to be out, that's the wrong mentality for the NFL. Like, it was very much not like I'm actually ready to go to me, but he was like, that's always my mentality. I'm ready to go. And I saw some people on Twitter being like, Christian McCaffrey says he's ready to go. And I was like, no, that's,
I think it's more likely he goes out. I think it's more likely he goes on the IR.
Yeah. Once I heard that thing where Mason got reprimanded for saying he was going to start, I was like, oh, they're just lying about all of this.
Yep.
So we're not seeing McCaffrey. Like I didn't even write up when I wrote up the walkthrough, which comes out Friday mornings, so I don't have a final injury report. But I didn't even write CMC's name. He's just out.
Yeah, I think I did include him in my full write up just for the like, I don't know. It sounds like there's some chance he plays. They're not ruling him out yet. I was like, so I included like Jordan Mason is a cash game lock if Christian McCaffrey is out. But that was the context it was in. It was like, assuming that Christian McCaffrey is out, he is going to be the cash game lock. By the way, the 4 for 4, if you look out later, I will have my full write-up out after the show, probably within a couple hours. I meant to get it up before the stream, had some technical difficulties right when I went to publish it. So I have to go fix some things that went wrong at the last minute, but it will be out tonight this week. Make sure you check that out. Also check out the new 4 for 4 optimizer. I believe Matt Savoca has done a breakdown of how to use the new 4 for 4 optimizer. I'm not 100% sure that that's done yet. I know it's in the works, going to happen at some point. So a couple things to check out at 4 for 4. Want to give those shout outs since this is a 4 for 4 show before the end of the show. All right, but getting back to it, I think we've talked about most of the, I mean, you brought up Justin Jefferson. It's not quite the same bucket as Jefferson because I don't think he's as good as Jefferson. And it's another tough spot. But like Devontae Adams, sort of a similar bucket where it's just like really good NFL wide receiver who's going to have zero ownership, could just see all of the targets in this game. I don't love the matchup, but vaguely in play for me just as he's good and nobody's going to play him. We've seen him in these spots in the past. We've seen Devontae go completely off, so I don't totally hate that. Are the Browns playable at all? Like Deshaun Watson is just so bad, but the Jaguars missing two starting cornerbacks in this game, sort of makes me think maybe we can play an Amari Cooper. We saw Elijah Moore actually ran all the routes last week, which sort of surprised me. I thought Judy would be, next in line for the routes. I don't think Moore got a ton of targets, but is anybody play? I mean, Jordan Akins to me is certainly playable with Njoku out at 3,000. His usage after Njoku went out in the second half was pretty elite. Like he was just used a ton. I don't know. I don't feel that great about any of the Browns wide receivers though. Do you think they're playable
concern
at
with
all?
Akins would be he might have been the tight end stuff might have been a key part of their game plan against the Cowboys with the pass rush and everything, getting this, and then they're just kept.
All right, we'll just use this guy instead. Yep.
Yeah, but I don't know. With a week to repair, do you use Jordan Akins a lot? That would be my concern there. And then Judy was getting targeted at a pretty similar rate to Cooper, so I don't want to play Judy, but it makes me nervous about playing Cooper.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Yeah. The only reason I bring it up is because we have two starting cornerbacks out for the Jaguars. Yeah. So it's maybe we should talk about it. I don't know, but yeah, I'm not super excited about any of them. Just throwing out some names before we totally get off the subject.
I can see it. I could definitely see it.
All right. I think, and we talked about the Bucks a little bit. We talked about, we didn't talk that much about the Lions. I guess we should talk a little bit more about Jameson Williams in particular.
JMO, man. I want Kareem's take on JMO. Is that real? Is he going back to what is your take there?
I think it's real, but I'm not loving this matchup for Jameson Williams because you're looking at Todd Bowles, who blitzes a lot, and Jared Goff, who's faced a decent amount of blitz over the years, and they blitzed a ton last week. The Bucks currently have the highest blitz rate in the league, so Bowles has not changed his approach there. When they got blitzed last year, they really threw a ton to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But in addition to that, Jared Goff threw very shallowly. He had a really shallow ADOT. His ADOT was higher than Mac Jones and Jake Browning. That was it last year. 6.4 ADOT against the blitz. So he's not trying to open up these big plays and make the defense pay. He's trying to get the ball out quick and short when he gets blitzed. He's going to get blitzed a lot this week. I don't think that's great for Jameson Williams. Not that the nice thing about Jameson Williams is that I think he's going to get targeted on some intermediate stuff. He's running a ton of routes. He's not just a one-trick pony now. So I'm excited about him. But in this particular matchup, I think the chances of him getting those big play opportunities are a little lower, and the chances of Amon-Ra just getting peppered with targets go up a bit. He averaged 2.97 yards per route run against the blitz last season, including the playoffs. So I'm excited about him. I also think Laporte is pretty interesting. He scored 6 of his 11 touchdowns, including the playoffs last year against the blitz. So those two guys, again, with the kind of the more shallow yards after catch profiles, I think set up pretty well in this matchup.
Are you worried about Laporta at all, long term, due to JMO? If JMO rises up and becomes this true elite wide receiver too, he appeared in the last game, how much does that make you nervous about Sam Laporta?
No, it's really bad for Laporta, and it's really bad for Amon-Ra St. Brown, who by the end of drafts was going ahead of Justin Jefferson, because if you add a third guy who can just command 20% of the targets, it's really bad for everyone else there, because it means that their games where they just randomly how many games can St. Brown randomly pip 13 targets if Jameson Williams is just there's a big difference between Jameson Williams being able to contribute to the team as a guy who can do winning plays and Jameson Williams just being a normal NFL wide receiver who can just go and get targets. If he's a normal wide receiver who can get 8 targets, that is pretty bad for St. Brown and for Laporta. But I don't know. It's 1 week. I don't know how much
small sample.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we know Amon-Ra is elite at what he does, and that thing is exactly what Jared Goff prefers most. So,
Yeah, 100%.
And this is again a matchup that has the potential to kind of open up those quick pass targets to Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's probably something they're building into the game plan. Would be another thing I'm betting on this week. So that's something I'm excited to bet against this week, that Jameson Williams' emergence is actually so good that it's going to change this offense fundamentally. And, Amon-Ra is not going to be the clear target leader anymore. Like, I would like to bet against that.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Jamar Chase, another receiver that's maybe sort of interesting.
Super overlooked, yeah.
Said he was going to be limited last week. Didn't end up looking all that limited. Saw 6 targets, was like 85% rep participation. So I had no idea what he meant when he was like, I'm going to be limited if I play in this game. I thought, is that going to be 50% of snaps? No idea what to make of it. But he looked like he was not all that limited. We're doing Kansas City game stacks where we're playing Mahomes. We're playing it through the Chiefs. Do we like Jamar Chase as a bring back?
Probably won't play with a bring back, honestly. It's like Jamar Chase is the same salary as Cooper Kupp,
And it's expensive.
Yeah, he's
like
so
you're
expensive.
Yeah.
That's really what it is for me.
That right there is such a difference between 2024 DFS and 2020 DFS. Like 2020 DFS, you'd be like, bro, I'm just doing the bring back. And now I'm like, I'm probably not doing the bring back. Like, probably not that often would I be.
Well, the bring back, like in this case, I mean, it's not like how much are you benefiting from like the correlation? Like it's Jamar Chase, and he's really expensive.
It's more that it'd be just ensuring that the Chiefs are
Right.
trying for 4 quarters, that they are continuing to pass for 4 quarters.
I would like to ensure that at around 5,000, not 7,800.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's expensive.
Yeah, Yoshivas is maybe.
I mean,
better.
Honestly, I think that's what I just said by accident.
Yeah.
Easier.
He's only 38. Sure. Yeah.
All right. Any tight ends that we want to shout out?
Man, tight end. I feel like is crazy. There's one tight end who's got over 10% optimal probability, but it's Kelsey, who is exactly who you'd expect.
Yep.
I'm not as into Laporta because I am much more into McBride. I'd love to be able to just play a ton of $6,000 McBride, but what I'm getting in optimals is a lot of Colby Parkinson and a lot of really gross Jordan Akins type stuff, which I guess is telling you that the results from last week, at least the projections, are kind of believing that's just going to be duplicated. The high-end tight ends are going to score 11 points, and some Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau type is going to score 11 also. So just play this week's Foster Moreau and hope to run good.
Yeah. I'm kind of shocked at the lack of ownership on Isaiah Likely after last week. I thought for sure like he just blew up. Everybody's going to want to play Isaiah Likely last week, and now he's actually coming in at like easily under 5% projected ownership. I think I'm okay with that though. Like I don't know that I want to play a ton of Isaiah Likely. I don't know. Do you guys have any interest there? Pat?
Likely, I'm not super into. I think I don't know. I do like Likely, but I'm not sure I want to bet on the Ravens passing game in this setup. We didn't talk about Derrick Henry, but he actually is. Or did we not?
We'll get to running backs.
We'll get to running back.
I want to just do tight ends quickly and then.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But that's really how I'm kind of focused on playing the Ravens. If I'm looking at tight ends in that game, maybe Bowers on the other side.
I was going to bring up Bowers next. Michael brought him up in chat. Pretty strong first game as far as usage goes.
Pretty strong, like really strong first game. And as Davis mentions, like it's going to be, I think people are going to be funneled into one of 2 buckets, like you're punting tight end or you're paying up for one of the higher end guys like McBride or whatever, Kelsey, Laporta. Bowers 4,400, kind of more in the middle. So you might be building a little bit of a different type of lineup than the field, which could be a helpful way to get started that way. And yeah, I think he's a pretty nice play at that salary. The other dude in this mid-range would be Evan Ingram. I just did a podcast on the Legendary Upside podcast feed with Sacrilegious, and he's in these battle royale streets and mentioning that Evan Ingram's one of his favorite plays because the Jaguars tend to get the ball out very quickly when they face a really good pass rush like they're going to face this week with Cleveland. And you could just see him getting kind of peppered with targets. So on DraftKings, full PPR, he's definitely interesting too.
Yeah, just another PPR scam play. Yeah, Bowers 8 targets last week, and he's the type of profile where it's like that just might be what he gets. Like he just might be that kind of elite usage tight end, and he's cheap for now, so maybe take advantage of that while we still can. All right, any others you want to talk about running backs?
I think we can go to running back.
All right. Well, you seem, Corain, like you were itching to talk about Derrick Henry. Do you want to give us your thoughts on Derrick Henry this week?
Yeah, I think he's one of my favorite plays at running back. The Ravens were in a spot where they had to pass last week, and they did pass. They had a very high pass rate, but they actually passed a little bit less than you would expect given the game script. They didn't fight it, but they passed 3% less than expected. 74% expected pass rate, 71% actual pass rate. Now they're in a situation against the Raiders where game script is likely to just be wildly different. And I think this will be more indicative of who the Ravens would like to be. And, I'm bullish on the idea that the Ravens will pass when they need to, and that they'll be fun when forced to be. But we saw last year, they want to run the ball. They don't want to have to just drop back and pass it all the time. They brought in Derrick Henry. They're going to run the ball on the Raiders. They're going to run the ball a lot. And Derrick Henry faced a ton of stacked boxes last week. But if you look at the NFL Next Gen numbers, which weigh that, he was pretty good. He actually finished pretty highly in rush yards over expected. That factors in the stack box numbers. So 46% success rate actually, which is really good. Henry's still Henry. You can still load him up, and he's going to be in positive game script at home. I don't know. It just seems like this is a spot where it could look really obvious in retrospect that we just play Derrick Henry at home against a bad team as big favorite.
So here's my concern on DraftKings is it's actually a great example of this that just took place on Thursday night. James Cook scored 3 touchdowns and Devin Achane scored more points than him. I'm concerned that Derrick Henry could be similar to that on DK, where he's lost the explosion to score the 80-yard touchdowns that he used to score. So this 3 touchdowns and 89 yards and 1 reception for 4 yards hit a ton of optimals. I think I probably won't play any Henry this week. Honestly, I think he's kind of transitioned into being a different play. I honestly, it's Friday. I've got a lot of time left to change my mind. I might just make all my teams Kyren Williams, Jordan Mason teams and just decide to get weird elsewhere. They just feels like those guys are so locked in to scoring a lot of DraftKings points.
All right, so Pat, you and I will continue the running back.
Play. Yeah,
he's 5,200.
But he's 5,200. Yeah. You get a lot of salary savings, but I mean, it's the exact same type of play.
And that is, Pat, that is a good point. There's a pretty clear path to failure for Mason, which is he goes 90 rushing yards, 1 reception for 4 yards and a touchdown, and Ramondre, Charbonnet, and Kyren all go nuke, all go 25 plus or more, and they're not prohibitively expensive. And you could have clearly played all 3 of those guys together, and Mason ends up not being optimal.
Yeah, definitely a path to failure. I mean, you keep giving the examples of the guy gets to 90 rushing yards, but maybe Henry just gets those 10 more and gets the 100-yard bonus, scores a couple of touchdowns.
That still is only 24 points. The bonus and 2 touchdowns is 25 points.
You're definitely right. For DraftKings in particular, the fact that he doesn't rack up PPR points hurts Henry's ceiling quite a bit and his floor quite a bit. So
his PPR scam levels are at literal 0.
They're not at literal 0. they've used him on screens and stuff. That's been something over the
They,
last
they
three
threw him a
or so
screen
years.
last week, and he couldn't catch it. It was.
I mean, it's not great. It's not ideal.
Like it was like one where I was like, Justice Hill gains 14 yards on that play, and Derrick Henry just kind of lumbers over with his hand in the air and like falls over as it bounces out of reach. It was really.
I will say
bad.
the other side of this, and this is obviously a very minimal point, and it's reflected in projections, but like because he's used only in the running game, I think Henry like he just because all of his usage is rushes, he is a little bit more likely to get that 100-yard bonus than most running backs. So that's like the
That's
one
true.
thing is like even
No,
though he's not involved,
that's
he does get a little bit like
that's a
more
wind
likely to
horse
hit that
right
bonus.
there. That's a really good wind horse. Is
Yeah,
that his
thank you.
yardage all comes via the rush? Yeah.
Yeah, so slightly more likely to get one of those 100-yard bonuses at least. So, but you know, projections will reflect that with Henry. I don't hate to play. I mean, we just saw J.K. Dobbins go off against this defense. I think Derrick Henry should be able to match J.K. Dobbins there. But with that said, J.K. Dobbins, another guy that I'm kind of into this week. Again, just has that soft matchup. I think I'm just too into this game. Probably it's a gross game. I shouldn't like it as much as I do, but like matchup with the Panthers defense, J.K. Dobbins looked pretty good last week. Like I think he's not that good these days, but I could be totally wrong about that. He's had some juice in the past, so maybe he does still have some juice. Should get a lot of workload here, I think, against the Panthers. What do you think of J.K. Dobbins this week?
He's got some juice. I mean, it hits, very flavorful, not much of a finish.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yes.
very kind of watery finish there. The juice with J.K. Dobbins. I don't know. I mean, like what I guess Davis, like, what do you think from a projection standpoint on him? Because he only had 37% of the carries.
It's like impossible to project him, right? What I sort of feel is that this is a micro level of what. Like the Gretsch is very good at talking about this, which is players who are very efficient are more likely to get the ball more often, as opposed to you project those guys. Oh, the only way Xavier Worthy could be good for fantasy is if he scores every time he gets the ball. It's like, well,
right.
No, actually, if you zoom out a little bit, like, oh, I'm Jim Harbaugh. What am I going to do? Well, I'm probably just going to give the guy who ran for 135 yards on 10 touches, I'm probably going to give him the ball a little bit more, as opposed to watching Gus Edwards just run into the butts of his linemen. Now, all that being said, Dobbins is like a pretty popular, like if Dobbins is more owned than Sharps, there's enough input volatility there that I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let that be. Because I also expect that game to be so fast and slow. Like each team is just going to run the ball so much and just try and get out of there. I feel like there could be like less than 100 plays total in that game, which is not ideal for fantasy.
True. Fair point.
Yeah. But I mean, what should happen is that Dobbins should get clear lead back treatment now after that week. But I'm nervous that doesn't actually happen.
They're split like almost evenly last week. I know you guys have both probably looked at all of the stats, but for those who are not aware, J.K. Dobbins, 10 carries last week, 135 yards. Gus Edwards, 11 carries last week, 26 yards. So there was kind of night and day difference between those two running backs. As somebody who was a bit of a Gus Edwards slappy all hot best ball summer, I am not feeling great about that. Did not look great for Gus. Apparently, the rumors of his demise, not premature at all. We're right on schedule. It might be J.K. Dobbins season, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, he had, so per PFF, his elusive rating, which is supposed to be 0 to 100, was 240. So pretty good week for J.K. Dobbins.
Damn.
We get, elusive rating does get weird in small samples, but it was good. But he also, per PFF, only had 9.9 expected points in that outing, and then he delivered 13 points over expected. So that's just the workload really was not there. It was all efficiency, and I generally am on the efficiency will lead to more workload train, but this dude's coming off a torn Achilles. Like, how big can the work? Like, maybe this is exactly what they want. They want him to be their explosive element in a smaller. That could, they could view that as kind of how they save him and stuff.
Yep, that would make sense. Maybe we need to rapid fire. I think we're getting to like the point of the long end of what these shows were last year, but want to get our thoughts out there. Want to get the plays out there. I think we talked about Kyron. I think James Conner, another very solid running back play, really solid role in that same game. I like that quite a bit. Any other names that you guys are itching to get out there? Just get them on the record.
Connor's one of my favorites. They I think we're pretty clearly trying to run the offense through him. Early on in that game, he wasn't very efficient last week, but he was very efficient last year, and I think he gets a lot of work.
Jerome Ford, another like potential cash game play, like the usage just really good for Jerome Ford last week.
If you run optimals before the Charbonnet stuff, you're going to get some of him. It just feels like, I mean, this is kind of what happens once the season starts and guys get injured, is like Thursday and Friday, there's like 11 guys who are in play. And then by Friday, there's such a stratified level of projection because we get more information. And running back is actually kind of a spot where you don't fight it all that much. Like wide receiver projections are so much more volatile. Yeah. Like fighting, like Jamar Chase, great example. No one's batting an eye if Jamar Chase scores more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp this weekend. Totally normal, totally expected thing. But it would be pretty bizarre if Jerome Ford scored more points than Kyron,
Jonathan Taylor
or Jonathan Taylor. Yes. Yeah. It would be very bizarre.
Yep. Any other names?
I'm trying to see if I've got anyone else. I'll probably play a pretty narrow core at running back this week and a wider core at wide receiver. Cause I've been sitting here trying to, David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, obviously. Like they're both,
Breece Hall.
I mentioned those with the Lions stuff. Well, I was going to ask you guys about Breece Hall because we talked about like,
he's just a lock. I think.
Well, you said he was. You said you're playing Mason and
what gives?
Kyron. So you're not even
okay. All right, fair. I should not have said that. Yeah, Breece. So Cardi, who marches to the beat of his own drum, has Breece Hall projected 4 points higher than every other running back on the whole slate.
Wow.
I saw some other projection sources that were similar. They're just like, oh my god, and it like intuitively to me is like that feels too high. Like I was like, what is wrong with this? And I was like, I look in the numbers. I was like, is Tennessee's defense not as good as I think it is? And I was like, no, they were pretty good last week. The usage was like good, but not like, I don't know. There are a lot of running backs with better usage than Breece Hall last week. Is it just like he's just that good? Is that? I mean, I guess that's probably the reason. Well, he's just that efficient.
The usage was as good as it gets in the snaps that he played with Rodgers. It's just I think Rodgers left after 42 snaps.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
If you extrapolate that out to 65 snaps on offense, he looks as good as
that's
Kyron.
The other thing I think is that he had the 21% target share, and there was part of it. If you're making a bear case against Breece, part of it would be like they didn't have anything functional, so they just gave him targets But now you've got Aaron Rodgers, and the offense can be clicking. They can do so much other things. They're not going to need to throw to Breece, but they threw to Breece a bunch. The offense doesn't look like that functional. It looks like functional enough to support a running back, though. I think that specifically the receiving role being there in a pretty big way was pretty bullish. And I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm torn on Breece because he's expensive. It's going to be really chalky, but he's 7,400. So is he expensive? Because he's probably the favorite to be
couldn't he just end up? Couldn't he be like old, like Le'Veon Bell, old David Johnson? Like he ends up being an $8,800 player, and you're like that. Your lineup is trying to get him in every week. Like, I got to punt tight end and punt defense to get Breece.
How do I fit Breece Hall? Week 6, trying to fit Breece Hall at 8,800. When you're like in week 2, I could play him at 74, and I just didn't.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head exactly. Yeah,
and I think historical anomalous point. Yeah, I think the Titans defense is going to be good this year. Like that's part of the reason I was like I'm hesitant about Breece Hall. But I think Davis nailed it with he didn't get a full workload because they didn't play a full game last week. So maybe the usage gets a little bit better with Breece Hall this week. But I mean, he's 7,400. He's like in all the optimals. He's a cash game lock essentially. If you just run like the top 150 optimals using a bunch of different projection sources, he's in there in all of them. So a very good point per dollar play. I like the Lions call out. Lions, one of the best offensive lines, maybe the best offensive line in the entire NFL. Jameer Gibbs, David Montgomery, hard to predict week to week, but both very much in
But
play.
we know the ceiling's there. We like the game
Yep.
environment, and so the fact that it's hard to predict, like if you predict that right, the field
Yeah.
is going to have a harder time getting there. So
So could be an Omega game. Davis, thoughts on Isaiah Pacheco? I mean, we talked about the fact that they're playing the Bengals. Maybe they keep their foot on the gas a little bit longer.
So again, curious my friend Crane's thoughts. I wonder if now the Chiefs just had 10 days off. P. Ryan's now been with them for 20 days or whatever. He's got more time to learn the playbook. P. Ryan literally was an outstretched fingertip away from scoring like a 35-yard touchdown on a wheel route. I wonder if the long down distance nightmare, like turning Pacheco into, basically Donta Foreman for the Chiefs. I wonder if we're literally already there.
I mean, you're telling me I can't play Derrick Henry at 6,700. I'm supposed to play Isaiah Pacheco at 69.
I don't have him. I would just rather play James Conner. I think James Conner, Crane, I mean, James Conner is just kind of like he's the eat your vegetables pick. He had 10 of their first 14 plays from scrimmage were James Conner touches for the Cardinals last week. Like all their scripted plays were like, give the ball to James.
Yeah.
Can you stack him? What was the passing game usage last week like? Let's see.
He lost some third downs to DeMarcado and Trey Benson. Trey Benson got one series, but they always use Conner on the goal line. So any kind of shuffle pass, whatever type thing.
He did get work, like, he doesn't play on third downs, but he does get. It's like, remember how Mixon would never play on third downs with the Bengals, but they'd still throw to him some.
39.5% route participation last week, 3 targets. So he's not like a complete zero in the passing game.
It's not great. 39% is not great.
Yeah, it's not elite, but it's also
19% targets per out run. They looked for him a little.
Yeah,
and
that's what
I
they
feel like
did.
he's been a pretty good receiving running back. He's made some really nice. I mean, maybe he just has good highlights, so I think of him as being a pretty good receiving running back, but I don't think he'll be a zero going forward. Just trying to decide if I'm
more than a Henry type. He kind of bridges that group. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Ramondre Stevenson projects really well. I think he's an interesting play against the Seahawks.
Can I bring up a guy I'm not interested in? But I just want to see if you guys are as not interested. So Jonathan Taylor, I feel like along the lines of guys who he didn't get targeted last week. You could make a case he's just going to get a ton of rushing work. I think I would make that case. He's going to get a ton of rushing work in this game, but
it does sort of feel like one of Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor is probably going to be in the optimal every week, and it's just you got to figure out which. So
which
the
one?
week that Anthony Richardson throws 2 70-yard bombs, that's the Richardson week. The week that those passes bounce off the turf or are intercepted, those are the Jonathan Taylor weeks.
The thing is, Davis, every week they will bounce off the turf. The question is if there's 2 more.
The first miss to A.D. Mitchell, Crane, that was getting shot all over again. I was just I couldn't wait to show the pencil pushers that one, and Richardson just missed him, dude. It was brutal.
Dude, I don't know if I've ever seen a worse miss in the sense that there's probably a 20-yard square radius where it wouldn't have been a miss.
Where it wouldn't have been a miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Awful.
Jonathan Tayller, just looking up some of his stats from last week. So 16 carries, took all 16 of the running back carries. Trey Sermon did not get a carry yet. 99. I'm seeing 95.4% snap share, but I don't know. This is the data is a little bit different.
The lack of a target even worse.
Yeah. So no, 70.8% route participation. He ran routes on 70.8% of dropbacks and did not see a target. That's
a new low, all-time low in yards.
Which is and that's the narrative with rushing quarterbacks. They just don't target their running backs as much. So it's this is kind of the worry with Jonathan Taylor, who, part of what makes him go, part of what's good about Jonathan Taylor is that he's been used in the passing game as well as the running game a little bit. I don't love that. So I think I'm on the same page as you. The other side of it is the Packers just can't score. What if the Colts just want to run all over them?
Well, that's kind of why I brought him up, because it makes me a little bit nervous in that no one's going to play him, and he's set up for I wrote it up for redraft. I'm like, this is why you drafted Jonathan Taylor. This is the game where he's just going to get fed. But my hope is that he's 7,700, and it's just he doesn't do it. It's all the points that Davis made about Henry, but another $1,000 of salary you got to beat.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, it's not my favorite play. I would also be nervous about a full fade there. And this one, one more name I'm going to bring up, and I'm sorry, Pat, in advance. I know this is going to be painful for you. Najee Harris, 5,500, just the clear bell cow last week for the Steelers. I'm sorry. Again, I'm sorry.
No,
I
I
drafted
like
so
the
much
call.
Jalen Warren too. But against the Broncos,
I'm assuming Jalen
5,500
Warren's hamstring has never felt less, further from 100% without having to miss a game than Jalen Warren's hamstring. That's how I've decided to interpret it. I think Harris is good.
Yeah,
I think it's a good play. Yeah.
5,500 against the Broncos. One of the few spots that I'm like, yeah, this looks like a good Najee Harris spot. Yeah, that's good reminder about Jalen Warren, because I was looking at the stats this morning. I was like, that makes me nervous, because I drafted so much Jalen Warren as like my zero RB target over the summer. I
really, it's bullish that they view him as so integral to the team that they had to get him back for week 1 to be active, even though he's not 100%. It's actually bullish.
Outrageous.
It's actually bullish if you think about it.
Yeah, if you got to think about it like hard, don't just like think about it real quick, because you'll think it's bearish, but it's not.
Okay, one last chance. Any names anybody wants to throw out there before we close out the show?
I think we covered everyone. I'm sitting here looking at my stuff, and I'm like, someone between Andre Yoshivas, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Naylor, Tyler Johnson, Demarcus Robinson, Wan'Dale Robinson, Greg Dortch, like one of these like $4,200 wide receivers is going to decide who wins all the money this week. And I've got almost no conviction on which one is good.
Yeah, Jordan Addison ruled out today. I forgot about that part. So I don't know. Jalen Naylor looks a little bit more interesting. So I didn't even include him in my write-up. So now I have to go back and change that with Addison out. I think, so many of those cheap wide receivers. It will be interesting to see where the chalk, kind of consolidates around. Corain, any other names you want to throw out there?
You guys have any interest in Brian Robinson, who will be in the same mix as these cheap dudes, but
on FanDuel, probably.
On FanDuel especially,
more on FanDuel,
No, I like that call out. Good matchup there.
He actually did get 4 targets last week.
That's the thing, man. Like he's made plays in the passing game. Like it's like James Conner. Like you can throw him the ball and he'll kind of scoot. He's not a zero as a receiver. He's not a receiving back, but he's not a zero.
Yeah.
I think Davis talked briefly in a negative way about Daniel Jones. I will just note, like, it is like the best possible matchup for Malik Neighbors. So maybe need to at least say that, like, Malik Neighbors could go Burr against the Commanders defense, just because that's a defense that just wide receivers go off against them. So I feel like that's worth at least mentioning.
That's worth mentioning. Yeah. What's his price?
The
59.
59. I like that one. That one's a good one.
The simulations are big fans of Daniel Jones. Me, not so much,
really?
But well, they always the Sims will. What's he, 5,300? The Sims will always look at a $5,300 quarterback with like a 37-yard rushing projection and be like, "This is the greatest thing that has ever been presented to me. I can't believe that I've got this opportunity." Because guess what, Crane? The Sims have never watched Daniel Jones play.
They need to watch him. I think we need to make them watch him. We need to sit the AI down.
They'll change their mind. They'll come around.
They will. They will.
Yeah.
We can't have this. The machines have to at least see Daniel Jones if they're going to recommend him.
All right. I think we've named every player on the slate. So we're good on that front. Where can people, Davis, I'll start with you. Anything that you want to shout out? Where can people find you? What do you have coming up, etc.?
You can check out my YouTube channel. They can check out patreon.com/DavisMattic for more thoughts on all of this stuff. And good luck this week, everybody.
Good shout out there from Brian Raymond. Wan'Dale did see 11 targets last week, so also could eat up that Commander secondary. Pat, same question to you. What do you have coming up? What do you want to shout out?
Yeah, I'll shout out my site, legendaryupside.com. I've got the walkthrough, my game-by-game breakdown of every game on the DraftKings main slate. And then we also have the island games covered by Matt Irby, who does an article called The Quick Slant. So got all the games covered for you over at Legendary Upside. I had Amon-Ra as the cover boy of the article this week. So the Lions Buccaneers write-up is completely free. It's above the paywall there. So check that out. And yeah, just did a Legendary Upside podcast, just wherever you get your podcasts, with Sam Sherman and Sacrilegious, as we broke down some of the most interesting matchups of the week. And then for any redraft players, we've got Stephanie Miller's waiver wire column that comes out every Tuesday. That truly invaluable stuff. She dives real deep on all of these waiver wire pickups, and Steph manages the waivers for my high stakes portfolio that I do with ship chasing. So
Nice.
literally trust her to do the high stakes stuff. She's excellent. So recommend people checking that out as well.
Very cool. Yeah, go check out their stuff. I will have on 4for4. We'll be publishing my game by game breakdown this afternoon. Again, had some technical difficulties that had to push it to after the show, but going to get back to that, reformat it, and publish it very shortly. So keep your eye out for that one on 4for4's website. All right, that will do it for DFS MVP week 2. We'll be back next week. Should be the same time. I think we're planning on the same time unless something comes up. It'll be Friday afternoon. Thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we will catch you next week.